Just try from there, yeah? Different color, that's good because different harmony. We were all being trained specifically, first for school competition, then for Moscow Conservatory competition, all union competition, international competition. We were trained as athletes to win. And that is a rather negative side because that narrows the attention to a very particular repertoire that also narrows the range of just the style of playing. You know, we would all be trained to play, you know, to impress with your technique, with your sound, with assurance with which you play. And we were always trained as individualists. We were never trained as collaborators, I mean, as a team. A little bit more far away. A little more. Or you could play along. Very good. Bravo, Sashule. Very, very good. The whole Russian tradition of violin playing became, in a way, you know, the most impressive, but also in some ways the most, you know, the most narrow tradition of interpretation, because violinists became somewhat like tenors who only really cared about, you know, themselves, and they thought that there's a whole world in that one single melody line, you know. And even the Tchaikovsky concerto, which starts so beautifully and actually rather casually without a major statement, it would sound in there. To show theirs, where in fact what he's saying is just sort of waking up. You see, you don't have to be expressive using, you know, 220 volts all the time, you know, in the fifth gear right from the beginning. And that was very much the trend of the time, you know, and you had to impress the jurors, you know, they might not even let you play to the end, so you have to milk every note, you know, impress with every passage, you know, and the whole thing was just competition bound, you know, it was really becoming quite athletic in its own way. By immersing myself in chamber music, you know, there was so many much more interesting things going on in the score besides that just first violin, you know, part that made me realize that in every kind of music there is an aspect of chamber music. There's a principle, what I call the principle of chamber music, which for me, the principle of give and take. time in history that somebody finishes before.
No, I was trying to,
Yeah. And I think in terms of dynamics, the first phrase is a little bit more, though it's piano, but then più piano. And then the second half with this piano, then pianissimo. There's a difference.
Yeah,
So it's
we are not together.
No, we are together, but we lose Gerard there because it's difficult for him.
We never finish the harmony at the same moment.
No, that's another thing. Yes. So I suggest we do that again. Maybe we do second half of the trio second time.
Yeah.
Going into One. As a young student in Moscow, I knew the backstage life of famous musicians. I knew the intrigues, the compromises, the price for fame that they all, without an exception, had to pay. Within the Soviet system, there was no other way. You had to bribe the officials at Gosconcert, had to bring presents to everyone in the bureaucratic structure, you had to pass the party commission, it had to be, your passport had to be approved by the KGB, by the party, by the Ministry of Culture, all of that. And the more connections you had, on one hand, of course, made it easier for you to get there, the more compromised you would get. So the people with the most connection, who moved very smoothly within the system, were the most corrupt. Inevitably. I knew it, I saw it, and I hated it. When I was 21, I came out for the first time to the West, and I came to Montreal, and I just couldn't believe the air. The air that I was breathing was different. I felt it quite physically. And somehow that feeling of being free of being watched, free of that constant psychological pressure that we lived with, that was very, very important for me. So I decided that I didn't want to be part of that system. In my mind, that was quite clear that I wouldn't have anything to do with the system, no matter what will happen in the West. And you were already there, then quite heavy into the establishing the group.
And actually the group was doing quite well at that time.
Yeah, I was getting.
That's why I was absolutely sure that, I'm supposed to stay. I'm supposed to live within the system. I was really worried that when Dima leaves the country, my father will be cut off, all the tours and everything. I mean, he will not be allowed to leave the country, to tour, to play abroad anymore. So I was sort of, actually when Dima left, I didn't say goodbye to him.
Let's get I suppose there was no coincidence in me heading the festival in Finland, of all places, because I've had this, since my childhood really, a special affinity to the Baltics in the summer. And what I got in Finland even more, I've got white nights, and the most beautiful, really, combination of the beautiful nature and beautiful music. When I arrived in the West, I had a lot of examples of similar, cases of performers who would come in and defect while on tour abroad, for instance, or would try to get a manager immediately and, make a big story, get in the headlines and, get as many concerts as you can, get as famous as you can. I wanted to finish my education at the Juilliard School. As it turned out, that was probably the best thing I could have done at the time, because it gave me a rare chance to get to know the West, not from outside, as so many of my colleagues who went on, never really having the time to learn the language, to get to know the culture, and to understand the mentality, which is quite different in the West than it was in Russia. I had that rare opportunity during the 2 years in New York. Those probably were the most crucial years of my upbringing. Since I was always geared up to competitions, I ended up doing quite a few. And the last one turned out to be sort of the launching pad of my career in the West. And to get that first prize of the first international free skies competition was a great honor.
Dima's playing at the Vienna competition was so completely in the highest, most intense, most dramatic, most passionate, most competent, most virtuoso Russian tradition that being, after all, Russian myself, my parents were born in Russia, I couldn't but succumb.
I used to be what's called a guarneri player, the one that would dig in, and try to produce as much, sound of a that my Strat actually could stand such punishment. But anyway, later on, I was fortunate enough to acquire this beautiful Stradivari made in 1717, and it taught me a great deal over the years. Now I've been playing on it for 9 years, and it taught me a lot of different ways of producing the sound, of making the violin speak without forcing it, actually going along with overtones, going along with the natural sound of the violin, rather than fighting it, rather than making it choke, which unfortunately so often happens, on the violin. And it's been a great companion, throughout the years. And I don't think I would have, I don't know, maybe I would have gotten to that point if I'd stayed in Russia, but I wouldn't have known so much. A great deal of the Baroque practice that's been happening, in the West also affected me in many ways, and the result was, the transcription of the Goldberg variations. To play now that piece and just to do the theme, in a way which would be resembling maybe some of the Baroque players. That's a pretty far departure from what one normally calls the Russian violin school. Go. Okay. After this glissando, so the downbeat comes from Joe and from Urban.
Half bar.
Значит, у вас
All
просто
right.
это пицциката.
Okay.
Да. Let's do that, yeah?
Music knows no boundaries in any case, and when you take a family, you have contradictions within the family that tend to explore every possible alternative. They are bound by music. They cannot, it's the best thing they can do. But within that music, they search for individual ways of expression, especially as so much was suppressed in Russia, it became a political statement to excel in improvised rock music or popular music.
The Russian rock and roll movement was not that political at that time. The best part of it for us, we were just having a great time. We really enjoyed that. We enjoyed specifically playing our own music, and we saw that audience really liked that. And what else, do you need? What else any musician would ever, dream about? The best thing about it was that finally Russian or Soviet youth, they got their own rock culture. It was Russian rock culture, not Western. It was not, copied from. Of course, there were a lot of bootlegging and everything, but still, the most popular bands were always original, with original lyrics, original music, and with a lot of, I would say, not really Russian, really with a lot of Soviet, influence, because it was pretty local culture.
To tell you the truth, I did not keep direct contact with Sasha for almost 10 years, for good 10 years after I'd left. And he was doing his own thing there. I was very proud of him when he came, to this Live Aid concert, which I watched at the time. And it was a very much publicized and I suppose the most famous moment of his life. He was watched by, I don't know, millions, billions. I probably will never play for so many people as he did for those few minutes.
I still remember how excited I was looking at the screens with our, faces on it. It was just amazing. It was amazing. And still I feel that it was the highest point in the autograph history.
I knew about his successes through the uncle. And then, of course, in '88, I came back to Russia, and that's when I first saw him as well as all the rest of the family and friends who I had not seen for almost 12 years.
I suddenly realized that we still are brothers. I mean, I hate the word cousin. I don't know why. It's not Russian. In Russian, nobody really uses this word. And I suddenly realized that I have a brother, and we were separated for 10 years, 10 long years. And since '87, the story just turned in another direction.
For the first time since playing the Beatles on the beach together, Sasha and I have been able to collaborate on the new piece written by him called Tribe Bolero, which really symbolizes our renewed friendship and reconciliation. Maybe it's also a piece about our shared Russian culture.
What about this improvisation?
Yeah, I'll fake it. We'll go up and down just to...
Okay, and I'll just continue playing this now. Okay.
Right. Then it's fine, then you do that
What
part.
happened to the second violins here?
Yeah, they went up a little bit too far.
I see.
So brought them down.
Poor guys. Okay.
Because they usually don't go up so much.
Sure, well.
That's why there's a second violin, it's not the first.
I see. That's the point. I got it.
They should never be above the first.